So Sony just released the new movie about Kraven the Hunter, and that made me think about one of my favorite Spider-Man stories I've ever read, and that is Kraven's Last Hunt. This video will look into the origins of Kraven's Last Hunt and explore why it is still one of Spider-Man's most powerful and unforgettable stories. With its haunting artwork and thoughtful writing, this tale changed what people expect from superhero comics. Kraven's Last Hunt is often considered one of the best Spider-Man stories ever, and there are good reasons for that. Written by J.M. DeMatteis and illustrated by Mike Zeck, this six-part saga first hit the shelves in 1987, across 3 different Spider-Man series. Web of Spider-Man issues number 31 and 32, The Amazing Spider-Man issues 293 and 294, and Peter Parker the Spectacular Spider-Man issues number 131 and 132. The story is dark and really dives into the psychology of the characters, pushing Spider-Man into some pretty unsettling territory, while also giving one of his longtime foes, Kraven the Hunter, a storyline that is both memorable and defining. At its core, the story is about Kraven's obsession with proving himself. For years he's been at odds with Spider-Man, but he's been haunted by the feeling that he's never really beat him. Now sensing that his time is running out, he sets out to finally show he's the better one, not just by taking down Spider-Man, but by stepping into his shoes. But Kraven isn't looking to be the friendly neighborhood hero. He's tough, aggressive, and dead set on proving that his version of being Spider-Man is way more effective. The epic showdown between Spider-Man and Kraven isn't your usual superhero fight. Instead of a classic battle, it's more about closure. What makes Kraven's The Last Hunt stand out is how it strays from typical superhero stories. It goes beyond just action. It explores the psychological sides of characters. He's portrayed as a deeply flawed, almost tragic figure, whose obsession drives the whole story. For Spider-Man, this tale is about survival, not just physically, but emotionally and spiritually, as he literally rises from the dead to reclaim who he is. Kraven's Last Hunt had an unexpected and winding path to its creation. Originally conceived as a Wonder Man story in the mid-1980s, the idea involved Wonder Man being alive and crawling out of his grave, with his half-brother, the Grim Reaper, playing a central role. However, Marvel editor-in-chief Tom DeFalco rejected the pitch. DeMatteis later reworked the concept for DC, crafting a Batman story in which the Joker kills Batman, only for the Dark Knight to return from the grave. This story explored the psychological impact on the Joker, theorizing that such an event would drive him sane. However, DC also passed on the pitch, as it overlapped with themes in Batman, The Killing Joke, which was in development at the time. DeMatteis then revived the story again, placing the Joker with Hugo Strange. This version was also rejected. Not ready to abandon the idea, DeMatteis finally brought it to concept back to Marvel, this time adapting it for Spider-Man. Initially, the story was planned to feature a new villain, but while researching characters, DeMatteis stumbled upon Kraven the Hunter in the official handbook of the Marvel Universe. He realized Kraven was a perfect fit for the tale, with his obsession over defeating Spider-Man adding layers of depth and tragedy. Another addition was Vermin, a villain DeMatteis had created with artist Mike Zeck, who joined the story to contrast Spider-Man and Kraven. The narrative gained further emotional weight, and Marvel's editorial plans to marry Peter Parker and Mary Jane Watson prompted DeMatteis to make their relationship a focal point. The resulting story explored themes of death, rebirth, obsession, and love, setting it apart from the standard superhero tales. Originally, Kraven's Last Hunt was slated to appear in Peter Parker the Spectacular Spider-Man. Editor Jim Salicrup, however, decided that the story's impact would be greater if it ran as a crossover across all 3 Spider-Man titles: Amazing Spider-Man, Peter Parker the Spectacular Spider-Man, and Web of Spider-Man. Artist Mike Zeck, who had worked with DeMatteis on past projects, was brought on to illustrate the story. Interestingly, Zeck completed all 6 covers before drawing any interior pages. The iconic Resurrection cover for Web of Spider-Man number 32, depicting Spider-Man crawling out of his grave, became one of the most memorable images in Spider-Man history. As Zeck puts it, if an issue had a scene with a hero rising out of his own grave, it's like receiving a #1 gift on your Christmas list. Years later, DeMatteis revisited his original Batman pitch for DC in Batman Legends of the Dark Knight, number 65 through 68, published as Going Sane. This version explored what would happen if the Joker thought he had killed Batman, focusing on the psychological fallout. Both Kraven's Last Hunt and Going Sane remain standout examples of DeMatteis' ability to explore complex psychological themes, turning standard superhero tropes into thought-provoking narratives. Since he was introduced by Stan Lee and Steve Ditko in Amazing Spider-Man number 15 back in 1964, Sergeri Kravinoff, or Kraven the Hunter as most know him, has been all about proving he's the best big game hunter out there. He's totally fixated on Spider-Man, seeing him as the ultimate target, and he brought his tracking and fighting skills to the urban jungle of New York City, going after the web singer without a break. This obsession made him one of Spider-Man's most famous enemies and led him to a team up with other Marvel heroes, including being a founding member of Dr. Octopus's first Sinister Six. Kraven's backstory shows he's a pretty complex character with strong connections to Marvel's history. He was born into a wealthy Russian family but had to escape during the February Revolution of 1917, which was tough on the Russian nobility. Over the years, he sharpened his amazing combat and tracking skills, and even took a mystical serum that gave him eternal youth and top physical shape. This kept him as a dangerous opponent for many years. In a cool twist, Kraven turned out to be the half-brother of the Chameleon, who was the first costumed supervillain Spider-Man ever faced. It was the Chameleon who suggested that Kraven go after Spider-Man, bringing his hunt to New York City. Around the same time, Spider-Man was going through some big changes himself. After putting on his sleek black suit, following the Secret Wars, and marrying his longtime love, Mary Jane Watson, Peter Parker found himself up against a more determined and dangerous Kraven than he'd ever faced before. The story kicks off with Kraven the Hunter hanging out in his mansion, lost in thought about his age and family history. He then heads into a big chapel where there's an open casket. He reflects on how, despite all the magical herbs and potions, he is still facing death soon. As a tear rolls down his cheek, he reaches into the casket and pulls out Spider-Man's black costume, getting himself ready for his final hunt. Then we see a small bar. A small group is there to mourn their friend, a guy named Joe Faces. Then Spider-Man show up, and they all freak out, thinking he's there to fight them, but he calms them down, saying he's just there to say goodbye, since he's had some interaction with Joe before. He even leaves them some cash to make sure Joe gets a decent coffin and a proper burial. After that, Peter heads home, but can't shake the thought that one day it could be someone close to him who passes away, and he starts reflecting on his own mortality before hitting the hay. Meanwhile, Kraven decides to throw himself into a bunch of spiders, thinking it'll help him expand his mind and connect better with Spider-Man. While this is happening, Peter wakes up from a weird dream and figures that swinging around the city will help him clear his head, totally unaware that Kraven is hot on his trail. As he is sitting in front of a big billboard, Spider-Man gets lost in thought about everything that's been happening, feeling like something is off. Out of nowhere, his spider sense kicks in and he dodges a dart aimed at him. But the second one hits him in the neck. He yanks it out, but it's too late. The drug starts kicking in, and he begins to see Joe's ghost. Just then, Kraven the Hunter shows up on a nearby rooftop. Spider-Man quickly takes off after him, but he's still feeling the effects of the drug dart. Spider-Man gives chase, and then Kraven smacks him with his spear, sending him crashing onto the rooftop below, and then tosses a net over him. He can't get out of the net, but he's not too worried at first, since he thinks Kraven will just do what most villains do. Take him to a secret lair and spend ages going on and on about his evil plans. But then he realizes that Kraven has a rifle in his hands. Kraven then shoots Spider-Man, killing him. We are then shown Kraven's manor and Spider-Man's body's been placed into a casket. Kraven buries him beneath the dirt. The next issue starts out with Kraven standing over the grave of Spider-Man, dressed in Spider-Man's costume. He removes the masks and starts laughing maniacally. At the same time, a woman is desperately seeking shelter from the torrential rain. We see a manhole open up and something grabs her and drags her down into the sewers. It was Vermin. He is on the hunt for food and he has just found a meal. Meanwhile at home, Mary Jane anxiously awaits Peter, who is significantly late. The unsettling thought that he might be dead begins to haunt her, filling her with a sense of dread. On the rooftops, Kraven patrols the city in Spider-Man's attire, determined to prove that he is the superior Spider-Man. Despite having second thoughts, he returns to his mansion and consumes a mysterious potion. This leads him into a hallucination where he battles a swarm of spiders that merge into a colossal spider. Overwhelmed by fear, he succumbs to the illusion, believing this will make him deserving of Spider-Man's essence. Meanwhile, in the sewers, Vermin finishes his meal and discovers a newspaper. The sight of Spider-Man's photo terrifies him, reminding of the time he was defeated by Spider-Man and Captain America. He resolves to leave his hiding place and demonstrate that he is no longer afraid. However, upon emerging, he encounters a spider and panics. Above him, Mary Jane searches the streets for Peter, and two men begin to harass her. She firmly tells them to back off, but they take offense and pursue her. Just then, Spider Kraven appears, defeating the men, until Mary Jane Jane pleads with him to stop. As he departs, she realizes the person beneath the mask is not Peter. Peter would not be that violent. Spider-Kraven crashes through a warehouse window during a heroin deal, effortlessly taking down the criminals. When the police arrive, they remark on Spider-Man's unusually violent behavior lately, noting that 15 individuals have ended up in the hospital due to his actions. They discover one of the drug dealers dead, and Spider-Kraven, observing from the rooftop, feels a twisted sense of triumph. Elsewhere, Vermin assaults a police car, throwing one officer into the sewer. Rats swarm and consume him. The other officer fires at Vermin. He disarms her and flees after hesitating, reminded of his mother. Back at the mansion, Kraven prepares to confront Vermin, eager to prove that he is superior to Spider-Man, capturing the creature on his own. Meanwhile, Vermin, asleep in the sewers, awakens to a sinister calling. In a shocking turn, a hand bursts from Spider-Man's grave. It is Peter, clawing his way back to life. Peter, trapped in a hallucination, sees Ned Leeds and mistakenly believes that he himself is also dead. After confronting his fears, he reclaims his identity as Peter Parker and resolves to break free. He crawls out of the grave, weak and disoriented, and stumbles towards Kraven's mansion. There, he discovers that he has been buried for 2 weeks, while Kraven impersonated him and tarnished his reputation. Enraged, Peter destroys Kraven's collection of preserved animal trophies. When confronted by Kraven's servants, he demands to know where Kraven's whereabouts, but they are too frightened to respond. Kraven, anticipating Spider-Man's arrival, waits in a warehouse with Vermin, who he had captured, and keeps him trapped in an electrified cage. Peter returns home to Mary Jane, who is overjoyed to see him alive. Later, despite her objections, sets out to confront Kraven. His spider sense guides him to the warehouse, where Kraven is casually waiting. Peter attacks, but Kraven does not retaliate, feeling that he has won by being the better Spider-Man. He then removes the black costume and changes into his usual clothing. He gets Spider-Man to follow him into another room where Vermin is being kept. Kraven then begins boasting about having defeated Vermin single-handedly, claiming that Spider-Man required Captain America's assistance. He then releases Vermin and convinces him to attack Spider-Man. Spider-Man tries to reason with Vermin at first, but realizes there is no reasoning with him. They continue to fight until Vermin gets the upper hand. Just when he is about to kill Spider-Man, Kraven stops him by throwing a knife, pinning Vermin's hand to the wall. He then commands him to leave, and allows Peter to chase him to stop him from hurting innocent people, promising him that he will never hunt again. Feeling that he has proven himself, and gazes at photos of his family, believing that he has finally found peace. He retrieves a rifle from a coffin and uses it to end his life. Kraven the Hunter is now dead. Meanwhile, Spider-Man tracks Vermin through the sewers, grappling with his newfound fear of the confined spaces. A swarm of rats attacks him, but he perseveres, while the police, alerted by an anonymous tip, discover Kraven's body, along with a confession detailing his crimes while masquerading as Spider-Man. Peter confronts Vermin in the sewer, but Vermin manages to escape. The battle continues to the surface, where Vermin nearly wanders into a heavy traffic. Peter pulls him back and ensnares him in webbing, handing him over to the police. As the officers marvel at Peter's resilience despite Kraven's actions, Spider-Man reflects on Kraven's promise to never hunt again. A newspaper headline reading Kraven's confession rests on a nearby newsstand, but Peter remains oblivious to it. Trusting that Kraven's promise was genuine, Peter decides to investigate further after he returns home to Mary Jane. From its initial rejection to its evolution into one of Spider-Man's greatest stories, Kraven the Last Hunt isn't just a story about victory or defeat. It is a story about identity, obsession, and the fragile line between man and monster. Kraven found peace not in triumph, but in letting go. For Spider-Man, survival wasn't just about escaping the grave, but reclaiming his purpose. The story forces us to ask difficult questions. What lengths would we go to prove our worth? And when the hunt is over, what is left of us? Have you read this story before? If you have, what did Kraven's Last Hunt mean to you? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. And if you enjoyed this exploration, hit the like button and subscribe for more deep dives into comic book storytelling. Until next time, keep hunting for the stories that move you.